Around this time last year I reviewed a horror film called Bedeviled, which was an effective Korean slasher film. Essentially, if Meek's Cutoff was a minimalist feminist western, as it's been called, Bedeviled is its horror equivalent. But the thing about Bedeviled is that it was a straight-to-DVD horror film and it didn't get much wide distribution, if I'm honest. Not many people knew about it unless you were a horror buff and you tried to look in and look for these types of films. So a year later, I'm reviewing another horror film with the same criteria, that it went straight to DVD, didn't get much wide distribution, but is actually pretty damn good. It's called The Loved Ones, and it's by first-time director Sean Byron. Loved Ones starts with a similar cinematic contrivance, a car crash. And 6 months later we meet Brent, who 6 months down the line is trying to cope with the loss of his father. It's not a spoiler, comes in the first 2 minutes of the film. He's a long, greasy-haired, pot-smoking heavy metal enthusiast who somehow has a girlfriend. But it didn't really matter that Brent had a girlfriend to Lola, or Princess as she is dubbed by her father. And a day before prom, she asks Brent to go to prom with him, but of course he declines it. But Lola can't really take rejection anymore. So she gets her dad to kidnap him, and through torturous events she holds her own deranged version of a prom with Brent. With English language horror films there seems to be a tendency, compared to their foreign counterparts, to be lazy, generic, uninspired, really boring. We can basically label them as remakes for the most part. And of course not every English language horror film that ever comes out is terrible. Look at The Descent, look at Kill List from last year. Really fine horror films. However, if we look at the American horror films, it seems to be that they look at what is actually really successful in terms of horror films and they remake it. So there's a supposed remake of Martyrs coming out, which I can't see anyone remaking or actually paying to go and see again. Or we have the Hollywood conundrum of continuing a franchise in horror that has gone well past its expiration date. So this is why we keep on having Nightmare on Elm Street rehashed. We keep on having Leatherface come back in 3D this year. And sometimes Hollywood gets really ballsy and remakes some controversial cult films from the 70s and 80s. So you had The Last House on the Left, and you had I Spit on Your Grave. And it doesn't come any more predictable and slight than Prom Night, which was remade about 5 or 6 years ago. Now Prom Night is a cheesy slasher film nowadays from the 80s, which was remade and was a box office bomb. No one really went and saw it after its first week. It was a quick buck to make, that was it. But with Sean Byron's The Loved Ones, he takes that Prom Night influence, not saying the film, but the whole idea of the prom and school life and being a teenager, and the idea of rejection, and taking that to the extreme to levels which are twisted and gruesome and tense, but also really, really fun, and also really funny. When I had finished watching the film, I described it as a combination of Prom Night mixed in with the deranged family element of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, mixed in with The Descent. Technically it's a combination that shouldn't work, and it has no right to work, but somehow through a really clever script, through really convincing performances for the most part, it comes off as a tense, exciting, fun, most of the time really funny film. Twistedly funny, but there's nothing wrong with being twistedly funny. It's also really creatively directed. It sometimes goes on really surreal routes, it sometimes plays with cliches, it sometimes is really, really inventive and does things I haven't seen from a first-time director on this low a budget for a horror film. It's quite miraculous. That's the best word to describe it. But it's not just aesthetic pleasures. There is, to an extent, depth to the film because there is depth to the characters. John Brumpton, who gives a really sensational turn as the dad in the film, because he treads the line of actually being in complete control of the situation but also being manipulated by his daughter, and we can't really work out which way it is. Did he turn his daughter into this, or was his daughter born like this and she's just had a sick, twisted pleasure? Sorry. Sick, twisted pleasure, there we go, for killing people and killing young boys for the most part. And as we know, with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, at least for me, it's not just a film that has a lot of controversy based around it, the film that should have been banned, as the Daily Mail puts it on the cover of the DVD. It's the fact that Leatherface, the character, has depth to him. He's a funny character, he's mentally retarded, he's bullied, he's scared. He isn't just doing this for his own pleasure. So it's a twisted, it's deranged, it's funny, it's really tense, it's exciting, and it's kind of effective as the type of horror film it's going for. So I would highly recommend checking out The Loved Ones as a really fresh approach to old formula. It's really, really good. So if you've seen The Loved Ones, do tell me what you think of it. You like it, you hate it, and if you know any films which fit my criteria of being horror, being straight to DVD, but is actually quite good in your opinion, then I will check it out and I may even review it a year down the line, basically.